In history, there is one law that every superpower must follow. When you are crushed, you disappear. Rome fell and the empire vanished. Babylon was conquered and its culture dissolved. But there is one civilization that defies every law of geopolitical survival. For 5 millennia, the greatest empires in the world made the exact same fatal mistake. They marched into these lands, certain they could wipe this identity off the face of the earth, only to be devoured by it instead. How does a nation lose its capital, lose its army, and yet force its own conquerors to speak its language and build its monuments? What is the hidden mechanism that allows a culture to lose the battle, but win eternity? This is the story of the one empire history could never kill. This is the story of the one civilization that refused to die. Over the course of this video, we are going on a complete journey through 5,000 years of blood, gold, and fire. We aren't just looking at names in a textbook. We are tracing the rise of the world's first superpower under Cyrus the Great, the architectural brilliance of the Sassanids, the catastrophic arrival of the Mongol hordes, and the revolutionary shifts that shaped the modern world. From the ancient ruins of Persepolis to the high-stakes geopolitics of today, this is the entire history of Iran, decoded and delivered with total authority. By the end of this video, you won't just see a timeline. You will understand the secret cultural DNA that allowed this nation to outlast every empire that tried to bury it. This is the definitive guide to the unbroken land of the lions. Let's begin. To understand why this civilization could never be erased, you first have to understand the stage upon which this drama was set. Imagine a massive, high-altitude fortress of rock, lifted nearly a mile into the sky. This is the Iranian Plateau. Bordered by the jagged Zagros Mountains to the west and the towering Alborz to the north, this land is a natural citadel. For 10,000 years, the geography itself acted as a silent guardian. While other civilizations were easily swept away across flat plains, the early inhabitants of this plateau were protected by a vertical world. This wasn't just a place where people lived. It was a laboratory for human survival. Here, in the transition from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age, the inhabitants mastered the art of the qanat, drilling deep into the earth to pull water from the mountains, turning scorched deserts into hidden gardens. This was the first hidden mechanism of their survival, the ability to thrive where others saw only desolation. Susa and the prehistoric layers. But the story truly begins in the lowlands, in a place called Susa. Long before the first pyramid was built in Egypt or the first stone was laid in Stonehenge, Susa was already a bustling urban center. Founded around 4200 BC, it remains one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on the planet. If you could walk through the streets of ancient Susa 6,000 years ago, you would see the birth of everything we recognize as civilization. You'd see the world's earliest painted pottery, intricate seals used for trade, and the first whispers of a complex bureaucracy. This wasn't a primitive settlement. It was a sophisticated society that was already interacting with the legendary Sumerians of Mesopotamia. But while the cities of Sumer would eventually crumble into the sand, the foundation laid here in Susa would become the bedrock of the Iranian identity. It established a precedent of cultural continuity that would last for the next 50 centuries. By 2700 BC, these early settlements had coalesced into the first great Iranian power, the Elamite Empire. For most history books, Elam is a footnote, but in reality, they were the equals of the Akkadians and the Babylonians. The Elamites were a mystery. They spoke a language unlike any other in the region, a linguistic island that defied classification. They built massive ziggurats, like the towering Chagha Zanbil, whose mud brick bones still stand today as a testament to their engineering genius. They were the first to organize the plateau into a unified political force. They didn't just exist alongside Mesopotamia. They often dominated it, carrying off the famous Code of Hammurabi as a trophy of war. This is the first loop in our story. a pattern of rising from the mountains to challenge the world's established powers, only to retreat back into the safety of the plateau when the tides turned. The arrival of the Aryans. As the second millennium BC drew to a close, a seismic shift began. From the vast steppes of Central Asia, a new group of people began to filter through the mountain passes. They called themselves the Arya, the noble ones. These were the Medes and the Persians. They didn't arrive as a conquering horde, but as pastoral nomads, bringing with them a new language and a new worldview. They found a land already rich with Elamite tradition and ancient urban centers. And here we see the first instance of the Absorption Code. Instead of wiping out the Elamite culture, these newcomers began to blend with it. They adopted Elamite dress, utilized their administrators, and respected their gods. This fusion created a cultural pressure cooker. The ancient roots of the plateau and the vitality of the new tribes were about to merge, forming an explosion of power that would soon result in the largest empire the world had ever seen. The stage was set. The actors were in place. The era of the great kings was about to begin. By 700 BC, the plateau was no longer just a collection of warring tribes and mountain fortresses. It was beginning to find its voice. While the world watched the brutal Assyrian Empire to the west, a new power was coalescing in the heart of the Zagros Mountains. These were the Medes. Led by the legendary King Deoses, the Medes did something revolutionary. They built a capital that mirrored their rising ambition. Ecbatana, today's Hamadan, was a city of 7 concentric walls, each painted a different color with the innermost plated in gold and silver. This wasn't just a city, it was a statement. The Medes weren't just living on the land, they were organizing it. They formed the first professional Iranian cavalry, and in an alliance that shook the ancient world, they marched on Nineveh, toppling the unbeatable Assyrians. But the Medes were only the prologue. They had unified the plateau, but they hadn't yet defined the soul of the nation. For that, the world was waiting for a man from a small province called Persis. Before the first Persian sword was drawn, the Iranian identity was forged in a spiritual revolution. This was the era of Zarathustra, Zoroaster. In a world of chaotic, vengeful gods, Zoroaster preached a radical new duality, a cosmic struggle between Ashad, truth and light, and Drudge, lies and darkness. This wasn't just a religion, it was the ethical backbone of the state. It gave every Iranian a role in the universe. By choosing good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, a peasant or a king was helping the creator, Ahura Mazda, defeat the darkness. This focus on truth became a national obsession. The Greeks would later marvel that Persian children were taught only 3 things: to ride a horse, to shoot a bow, and above all, to tell the truth. This moral framework transformed the Iranians from a collection of tribes into a civilization with a mission. The stage was now set for the first great king to turn this philosophy into a political reality. In 550 BC, Cyrus the Great emerged from the shadow of the Medes and changed the course of human history forever. In just 30 years, he conquered everything from the edges of India to the shores of the Mediterranean. But it wasn't the scale of his empire that was shocking, it was how he ruled it. When Cyrus entered Babylon, he didn't burn the city or enslave the people. Instead, he did something unprecedented. He knelt before their gods. He issued the Cyrus Cylinder, now hailed as the first charter of human rights, proclaiming religious freedom for all his subjects. He freed the Jews from their Babylonian captivity, funding their return to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple. This was the Absorption Code in its purest form. Cyrus realized that an empire is strongest not when it erases its subjects, but when it protects them. He became the King of Kings, but to his people, he was simply the Father. He had turned a kingdom into the world's first true multicultural superpower. If Cyrus gave the empire its soul, Darius the Great gave it its brain. By 522 BC, the Achaemenid Empire was so vast it should have been impossible to govern. Darius solved this through a stroke of administrative genius that we still use today. He divided the empire into 20 satrapies provinces, each ruled by a governor, but overseen by the king's ears, secret inspectors who reported directly to him. He standardized the currency with the gold daric, making global trade possible for the first time. He built the Royal Road, a 1,600-mile highway that allowed messengers to travel in 9 days what took others 3 months. Neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers, the Greeks wrote, a phrase later adopted by the U.S. Postal Service. Finally, he began the construction of Persepolis, a magnificent ceremonial capital that acted as a stone map of the world. Here, delegates from Ethiopia, India, and Greece all walked the same halls, bringing tribute to the throne. By 1400, the transformation was complete. It was no longer just a plateau. It was the Achaemenid Empire, the largest, most sophisticated, and most tolerant entity the world had ever seen. The Iranian identity was now a sun around which the rest of the world revolved. Just as the Achaemenid Empire reached its peak, a shadow fell from the west. Alexander the Great didn't just want to defeat Persia, he wanted to end it. In 330 BC, the unthinkable happened. Persepolis, the jewel of the world, was put to the torch. The great kings were dead. The empire was gone. But this is where the Absorption Code first activates. Look at what happened next. Alexander didn't force the Persians to become Greeks. Alexander became a Persian. He began wearing Persian robes. He demanded the Persian ritual of proskencies bowing, and he married a Persian princess. He didn't just conquer the land, he was seduced by the system. When he died, his generals tried to Hellenize the East, but within a few generations, the Greek Seleucids were gone, replaced by the Parthian and Sassanid dynasties. The invaders hadn't changed Iran. Iran had simply digested the invaders. The fire of Persepolis had gone out, but the Iranian soul was just warming up. In the 7th century, a threat arrived that was far more dangerous than Alexander: the Arab armies under the banner of a new religion, Islam. This wasn't just a political conquest, it was a total ideological shift. The Sassanid Empire collapsed. The ancient Zoroastrian fires were extinguished. The Arabic language began to sweep across the plateau. By every law of history, Persian culture should have dissolved into the Arab Caliphate just as Egypt and Mesopotamia did. But Iran refused to vanish. They executed a masterstroke of adaptation. They became the brains of the Islamic world. Persians like Al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra, and Ibn Sina, the father of modern medicine, led the Islamic Golden Age. Most importantly, while they accepted the new faith, they fought to keep their tongue. The poet Ferdowsi spent 30 years writing the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, a 60,000-verse epic that saved the Persian language from extinction. They changed their religion, but they kept their soul. The Caliphate ruled the land, but Persian scholars ruled the mind. The Mongol apocalypse and the Great Rebirth. In 1219, the ultimate test arrived. The Mongol hordes of Genghis Khan. This wasn't war, it was an extinction event. Cities like Merv and Nishapur were leveled. Millions were slaughtered. The sophisticated irrigation systems, the lifeblood of the plateau, were smashed. Historians at the time wrote that the end of humanity has come. Yet, look at the pattern. Within 2 generations, the Mongol Ilkhanate rulers had converted to Islam, hired Persian viziers, and were commissioning the finest Persian miniatures and poetry in history. The wolves of the steppe had been tamed by the very civilization they had tried to wipe out. From the ashes of the Mongol fire rose the Safavid Empire, the dynasty that would finally unify the modern borders of Iran and establish the distinct identity that remains to this day. The Absorption Code had survived the greatest killers in human history. As we enter the 19th and 20th centuries, the threat changed shape again. No longer charging horses, but global superpowers, the British and Russian empires. They viewed Iran not as a nation, but as a chessboard, a prize in the great game. They carved out spheres of influence, controlled the oil, and manipulated the Shahs. But once again, the survival mechanism kicked in. Iran didn't just submit, it revolted. From the tobacco protest to the constitutional revolution of 1906, the people began to demand a modern state that could compete on the world stage. They took the Western ideas of parliaments and constitutions and Persianized them. Even through world wars, coups, and a revolutionary upheaval in 1979 that shocked the planet, the core objective remained the same: total independence from the outside world. They had spent 5,000 years being invaded by every power on Earth, and they had learned one final lesson: the plateau must be a fortress. To navigate 5,000 years without getting lost, we need anchors. The first and most essential anchor is Cyrus the Great. Think of Cyrus not just as a king, but as the architect of the Iranian DNA. Before him, empires were built on the idea of submit or perish. Cyrus introduced the world to join and prosper. By allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem and respecting the gods of Babylon, he created a blueprint for a multicultural superpower. When you think of the Achaemenid era, don't just think of gold and chariots. Think of the first time in history a ruler realized that diversity was a strategic advantage, not a weakness. Our second anchor is the man who was supposed to be the villain of the story, Alexander of Macedon. He is our mirror anchor. He arrived to destroy the Persian world but ended up reflecting it. When Alexander sat on the throne in Persepolis, he didn't just conquer an empire. He was conquered by its sophistication. He began to demand Persian rituals and envisioned a world where Greek and Persian blood were one. Alexander serves as the ultimate proof of our thesis. Even the most powerful conqueror in Western history couldn't resist the gravitational pull of the Iranian Plateau. Next, we move to the darkest anchors: Genghis Khan and his successor Timur. If Cyrus was the architect, the Mongols were the fire. They represent the extinction phase of our cycle. They leveled cities like Merv and built towers out of human skulls. This is the moment in our timeline where most civilizations would have ended. But Timur, a man of brutal contradictions, eventually became a massive patron of Persian art and architecture. These figures are the anchors of resilience. They show that even when the physical world is burned to the ground, the cultural world can remain untouched. By the 16th century, we meet our next anchor, Shah Abbas the Great of the Safavid dynasty. He is the weaver. He didn't just unify the borders. He wove together a new national identity through a specific religious and aesthetic lens. He made Isfahan half the world, filling it with turquoise domes and intricate tilework that defined the Persian look for centuries. Under Abbas, Iran wasn't just a survivor, it was a trendsetter. He turned the plateau into a global hub of silk, art, and Shia identity, creating the modern fortress state that we recognize today. Finally, we reach the modern anchors, the Pahlavi Shahs and the revolutionary leaders who follow. This is the pivot point. Reza Shah and his son represent the attempt to anchor Iran in the Western, secular world through rapid industrialization and oil. But the 1979 revolution, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, represents the plateau's sudden, violent rejection of outside influence. These figures anchor the modern tension we see on the news every day, the struggle between a globalized future and a fiercely independent traditionalist soul. By following these names, Cyrus, Alexander, the Mongols, Abbas, and the revolutionaries, you aren't just looking at a timeline. You are looking at the pulse of a civilization that has been beating for 5,000 years. We have traveled through 5,000 years of fire. We have seen the rise of the first superpower, the scorched earth of the Mongols, the elegance of the Safavids, and the modern steel of the 21st century. But after several minutes of history, one question remains, more haunting than all the rest. Why? Why did the Babylonians vanish? Why are the Hittites and the Assyrians nothing more than dust and broken pottery in a museum basement? They were just as strong, just as wealthy, and just as proud. Yet when they were conquered, they stayed conquered. Their languages died, their gods were forgotten, and their people dissolved into the shadows of history. Iran suffered more invasions, more bloodletting, and more catastrophic losses than almost any nation on earth. By every law of geopolitics, the Iranian identity should have been erased 10 times over. But it wasn't. Why did this civilization refuse to die? The answer isn't found in the strength of their walls, but in the nature of their soul. The hidden mechanism, the secret that explains everything we have seen is this: Iran does not merely resist its conquerors, it absorbs them. It is a cultural digestive system. When the Greeks arrived, they were seduced by Persian luxury. When the Arabs arrived, they were captivated by Persian administration and philosophy. When the Mongols arrived with fire and sword, they were tamed by Persian art and poetry. This is the ultimate aha moment of our journey. Survival isn't about being an unbreakable shield. It's about being an irresistible force. Iran didn't need to win every battle on the field because they knew they would win the battle for the mind. They allowed the invaders to take the throne, only to realize that to sit on that throne, the invader had to become Persian. They didn't just survive the world, they changed the world by letting it in. This is the true definition of a superpower. Not a nation that can destroy others, but a culture so potent that it cannot be destroyed. It is a fortress of the mind. This realization changes how we see every event in this timeline. The invasions weren't endings. They were infusions of new energy that were processed, refined, and added to the 5,000-year-old tapestry. This is why today a person in Tehran speaks a language that Cyrus would recognize, recites poetry written 1,000 years ago, and walks a land that has outlasted every empire that ever tried to claim it. The Absorption Code is the reason Iran isn't just a place on a map. It is a continuous living consciousness. The conquerors are gone. The empires have crumbled, but the plateau remains. And now, as we look at the modern world, we finally understand the gravity of what we are witnessing. A civilization that doesn't just endure history, but masters it. The Great Reclamation, Persia becomes Iran. In 1935, the world received a diplomatic decree that seemed like a simple name change, but was actually a massive geopolitical statement. The land the West had called Persia for 2,000 years officially became Iran. While Persia was a Greek label, an exonym tied to a single province, Iran was the name the people had used for themselves since the time of the Achaemenids, Arianum, the land of the Aryans. This wasn't just a rebranding, it was a reclamation. Under the Pahlavi dynasty, this was the first step in a hyper-modernization project. They wanted to strip away the image of a decaying empire and present a unified, secular, and industrial powerhouse to the world. They were attempting to prove that the Absorption Code could work with Western technology, that you could adopt the tools of the West without losing the soul of the East. But in 1979, the cycle shifted again with a violence that shocked the globe. The Islamic Revolution wasn't just a political change. It was a rejection of what scholars called Westixification. It was the plateau's natural defense mechanism kicking in against an outside influence that felt too pervasive. By pivoting from a secular monarchy to a revolutionary theocracy, Iran executed its most recent pattern interrupt. It built a new kind of wall, not of stone, but of ideology. The slogan, "Neither West nor East," became the modern version of the ancient mountain citadel. Today, when you see the headlines about the Islamic Republic, you are seeing the latest chapter in a 5,000-year-old struggle for autonomy. The revolution was the nation's way of saying that even in a globalized world, the Iranian Plateau will never be a satellite of another power. This brings us to the present. For the last 4 decades, Iran has existed under what can only be described as an economic siege. Sanctions, isolation, and geopolitical maximum pressure are the 21st century versions of the Mongol hordes or the British Great Game. Yet look at the reality behind the headlines. Just as they did with the Greeks and the Arabs, the people of the plateau are currently processing this pressure. They have developed a resistance economy, a world-class domestic tech sector, and a culture that remains fiercely pluralistic despite the monolithic image projected to the world. Whether it's the nuclear program or the axis of resistance, the underlying logic is the same one Cyrus used: the need to ensure that no outsider ever dictates the fate of this land again. History isn't over for Iran. It's just repeating its most successful loop. The world looks at a map and sees a country in conflict. But if you look through the lens of history, you see a civilization doing what it does best: surviving, adapting, and waiting to absorb the next era into its eternal story. 5,000 years is a long time for a flame to stay lit. We have watched empires rise out of the dust of the plateau only to return to it. We have seen the greatest conquerors in human history attempt to break the spirit of this land, only to find themselves kneeling before its culture. But the true history of Iran isn't written in the stone of Persepolis or the turquoise tiles of Isfahan. It is written in a collective memory that refuses to fade. It is the story of a civilization that realized very early on that physical borders are temporary, but identity is eternal. They didn't just build a nation, they built a fortress of the mind, a space where poetry is more powerful than politics, and where the soul of the people is the ultimate defense. Who was this nation? They were the world's first architects of tolerance. Who did they become? They became the ultimate survivors. And how will the world remember them? As the civilization that taught us that you can lose everything, your king, your capital, your very freedom, and still win the future by never forgetting who you are. The story of the plateau didn't end with the Achaemenids, and it didn't end in 1979. It is being written right now in every conversation, every prayer, and every act of resilience. History is not a series of dead dates. It is a living, breathing continuity. When we look at Iran today, we aren't just looking at a country on the news. We are looking at the latest chapter of a 5,000-year-old epic that is still unfolding. The invaders are footnotes. The empires are echoes. But the plateau is forever. If this journey through the millennia has changed the way you see the world today, I want to hear from you. Do you believe a culture's greatest strength lies in its ability to resist or its ability to absorb? Let's start a conversation in the comments below. I will respond to every single one. If you found value in this deep dive, hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs to understand the real story behind the headlines. To go even deeper into what is happening in this region right now, including the complex, high-stakes tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States, I've placed a link to an exclusive ebook in the description. It provides the crucial context you won't find on the nightly news. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a journey through history. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.